Hello, everyone. Welcome to my micro summit, Healing the Wounds. And my special guest today is Patrick Prohaska. And as a teacher, healer, and author, Patrick has helped thousands of clients and students shine with personal power, joy, and authenticity. Patrick is the creator of Lybbert, a revolutionary system for healing and personal transformation that blends law of attraction, life coaching principles with belief sculpting and energetic activations. Patrick is also the author of Brain Cells, Escape Your Mental Prisons, and other books about personal power, and he lives in Southern California. Welcome, Patrick.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's a real joy to to connect with you. And Cindy, it's always a pleasure when I'm interacting with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Today, your topic is healing the pain of bullies and cyber trolls. So I'd like to first ask you about what drives people to become bullies.
Ah, wow, we're diving like directly into it. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, I think I should first express that I think every single human being has been bullied in one way or another. And I spent like most of my early life being made fun of because I was bizarre, I was weird, I didn't fit the proper gender stereotype. I was a mathematics nerd, I was a theater nerd. I loved to meditate, I loved to dance. I did all the things that boys are not supposed to do if they want to be cool. And I grew up in a very, very, what would you say, conservative, but I grew up in an environment in which everyone was constantly policing the behavior of everyone else. And anybody who didn't fit in perfectly was ridiculed, criticized, beaten up. All of that happened to me. And I'm sure that all of that has happened to anyone and everyone who has ever decided that they want to live life on their terms. Because no matter how you're living your life, if you're doing what you want to do with your life, I can guarantee you somebody is in opposition to it and they don't like it. They're offended by it. They feel threatened by it and so on. So the question, what is it that drives bullies to do what it is they do? I would say it's insecurity and ignorance. So ignorance in the sense that I'm just speaking from my own personal experience here, but the town that I grew up in Kansas was a very, very tiny provincial town. We had fewer than 10,000 people in the city, and it was pretty much in the middle of nowhere. It was at least a 1 hour drive to get to any place else like Kansas City where there was more diversity. And I grew up in a Catholic family. I went to a Catholic high school, and there are very strict rules of how you're supposed to be when you grow up in an environment like that. So in that environment, the ignorance was essentially just lack of knowledge that other people and other ways of living exists. So a lot of times when people grow up in an environment in which they're never um, exposed to different ways of doing things or different foods to eat, and they never travel and they never go anywhere, then that's one of the things that fuels their desire to make sure that you conform with whatever their lifestyle is. And if you don't conform, you're weird, you're bizarre, you're a threat, and therefore they attack you for it. So that's one form of bullying. But the other more common form of bullying is just straightforward insecurity. Now, when a boy who's like 6, 8, 10 years old is beating somebody else up on the playground, it's usually not because they're doing some sort of analysis about whether he's a threat or not. It's usually because they're just looking for someone to pick on. And the reason they're looking for someone to pick on is because they have these internal insecurities and wounds that they're trying to distract from. So insecurity drives bullies. Insecurity drives um, people to treat other people like punching bags. And usually, when that happens, people punch down, meaning what they normally do is they look for somebody that they think is in a weaker position than them. They don't ever attack somebody that's stronger than them. They go for whoever looks weaker. And if it's a boy who's a bully, he's going to look for people who are not athletic or girls to pick on. And that's what I experienced because I wasn't athletic. I was a theater geek. So I got a lot of it. So, mhm.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I looked into it a little bit on the internet, and it says that there are over 300 million children are bullied every year, 1 out of 3, and 60,000 will skip school because of fear of being bullied.
Mhm.
And it's pretty sad. So I hope what we can present, and I know what we can present will be able to help others and make an awareness of it,
Mhm.
and help us to learn how to, love and accept ourselves and stick up for ourselves so that we don't have to be bullied.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing for people to realize is that bullies are not born. Nobody is born wanting to go pick on and beat up and hurt other people. That's trained into them. They either learn it by observing, they observe the teachers, they observe their parents, they observe other kids on the playground, and they do it because they equate in their mind, they equate force with power. So they think that what makes them powerful is hurting other people or making other people do what you want to do and so forth. So nobody is born a bully, but if they have parents who are constantly fighting with each other, or they're in an abusive family, or they have what I had, which was like in my high school, it was very militaristic. And I'm pretty much, I'm not overstating things when it seems like the instructors in the school were driven to humiliate anyone and everyone they could see. It was like straight out of uh, The Wall by Pink Floyd. It was
Oh, yeah.
that type of experience where the teachers were the biggest bullies of all. And if one student beat up another student, the teachers would laugh and they try to break it up, but they wouldn't break it up until after they gotten their laughs out of the way. So
Yeah.
that's the atmosphere that I grew up in, and I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. And unfortunately, my experience is far more universal than I think most people realize. So yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah, yes, it is. Well, how should we react when someone bullies us?
When someone bullies us,
Hmm.
okay, well, that's a really big question too. So first of all, you have to consider a lot of different things. Um, the power dynamics, the power differentials that are in place dictate different responses to different situations.
Hmm.
So you might actually be pinned down by somebody who is on the verge of punching you in the face. If you don't have the means to fight back or get out of that situation, it can feel really scary and dangerous not to do what the person wants you to do. And so I don't want to give like a universal answer that is sugarcoating everything, like just say no or demand respect or demand that people notice your boundaries and so forth. Um, it starts first of all with how you react when you witness bullying happening with other people. So it's important to really cultivate and create an atmosphere in which everyone's needs are met and everyone feels secure. Because as I mentioned before, it's that sense of insecurity that often drives the bullying. What needs to be called out is when authority figures make fun of people who are different, because if a teacher is making a joke about people who have a different skin color or people from a different country that he or she has no experience with, that is like an open invitation for everyone else to do the same. So that sort of thing needs to be called out. It needs to be weeded out at its most subtle forms, because the subtle forms feed the more overt forms of abuse. The other thing is that it needs to start with parents. It needs to start with educators. It needs to start with the government. It needs to start with society. And of course, you as an individual, you can't force the government and parents everywhere and teachers everywhere to embrace a certain, universal humanistic set of values. But I think it's getting worse long before it's getting better. Bullying is now the primary means of getting anything at all done in our government. Um, Senators, presidents, people in government positions, they now bully their way into getting things done. There's no more compromise. There's no more trying to understand the other side's position. It's just bully, bully, bully. And as I mentioned, bullying is driven by insecurity. And quite often we mistake leadership for bullying. We think that if somebody's like really aggressive in demanding that their way be done and nothing else is valid, then what they're doing is they're being a leader, but they're actually being insecure. And any type of leadership that's founded on insecurity is destined to fail. So that's my little political soapbox thing there. You can fill in the names any way you want, but I know who I'm thinking of. So,
Well, I love that you mentioned about the home and parents and instilling um, good belief habits into the children and teaching them to love and respect themselves and grow up with feeling secure.
yeah, and what's funny about that was I grew up in an environment in which people would laugh at the concept of self-love.
Mm,
Self-love was considered girlish. It was considered mawkish. It was considered woo-woo or airy-fairy or something. It's like I remember even when I was in college, I was in graduate school, and I went to the University of Chicago to give a speech at a it was for like the American Academy of Religion or something like that. And there was a graduate student at the University of Chicago who was relentlessly ridiculing any program that had um, a course on love. Now, when I was at the University of Kansas, I was a teaching assistant for a course called, I think it was called Human Perspectives on Love. Love and not just loving relationships, but what love is in all of its different contexts, whether it's brotherly love, motherly love, fatherly love, erotic love, altruisms, just all sorts of philosophical um, explorations of the concept of love.
mhm.
And here, like this full grown adult thought that it was the most ridiculous and stupid thing she'd ever heard of in her entire life. So
Wow.
that's the type of person who's going to, acquiesce to, um, the system as it is right now. So,
Mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember back in the days, boys did not want to cry. They were told crying was a no-no, and sometimes for girls too.
Hmm.
We weren't allowed to cry and show our expressions, and there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with showing our expressions and our emotions.
Yeah. And the problem that arises out of that is that when you are not allowed to express your emotions in a way that's safe,
Mhm.
what you do is you shove them down, you repress them. And anytime energy is repressed, the energy doesn't just magically vanish, it is pressurized inside your system. So the more you restrict yourself from crying, the more you restrict yourself from expressing any kind of emotion that somebody else might make fun of, the more it builds up inside you and then it explodes outward in uncontrolled and dangerous ways.
Yeah.
Now, what makes this even worse is the fact that when boys are growing up, it is okay for them to be aggressive. It is okay for them to be, really assertive. So when all of the painful emotions are denied to boys, but aggression is encouraged, then that becomes the only avenue that they have for expressing their repressed emotions. So whether it's repressed sadness or mourning or guilt or jealousy or any number of other energies that they might be pushing down because it's inappropriate, when they do explode outward, they explode through the gateway of aggression. And bullying is one of the consequences of that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, a little earlier, you mentioned about witnessing bullying. What should you do when you witness someone bullying another person?
Yeah, you don't tolerate it. You step in,
Mhm.
you do what you can to make sure that everyone knows what your position is, because and I say that, like I said before, you might be putting yourself in danger doing that, and that's a consideration.
Mhm.
If you step in to protect somebody, you might be the next target of those fists. And I'm not saying ignore that or pretend like that doesn't happen. What I'm saying is you act in spite of the fears because it creates a social change. So, I know there's like an evaluation that has to be done, but if you're completely silent as somebody else is abusing or hurting another person, then you're actually complicit in their behavior. And this isn't just advice for the school ground, it's true for everything in life. If there are people being systematically abused and oppressed in our society, and you're ignoring it because it doesn't impact you directly, then from one perspective, you're complicit in that. So it doesn't mean you have to drop everything and do everything in your power to stop it. Doesn't mean that you have to give up, um, you know, a lot of time, energy, and effort in order to make the change. But it does mean that you have to, be aware and express your opinions and let people know where you stand, and do so in a respectful way as well.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
actually reminded me of a time when I was fourth or fifth grade, and my sisters and I were on the bus on our way home after school,
Hmm.
and kids were picking on this boy who was in my class. He was very overweight, and my sister, who was older than me, stuck up for him and told them to leave him alone. And I thought, wow, she's brave.
Yeah, that does require bravery. Does
Hmm.
require bravery, and bravery is an awesome thing. Bravery is taking action in spite of your fears, and
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
it's if there are no fears, then it's not bravery. It's just action, and that's good too. But yeah, I think I would call for everyone to be a bit more brave.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point to make. Thank you. Let's see. What are some long-term consequences of being bullied?
Well, when you're bullied regularly, you lose self-respect, you lose self-esteem, you lose your sense of worth, and that alone can have very profound consequences for your entire life. You also come to expect it. You come to define yourself in terms of the abuse. You come to believe that um, it's just part of your nature to be beaten up. And that is an even more devastating condition to be in, because what happens to somebody who has been abused so often that they come to define themselves in terms of the abuse, it feels really weird not to have it. So if they get into a good relationship with somebody who treats them with respect, it feels awkward. It feels like they don't deserve it. It feels strange. And so they blow it up, or they do something to make the other person get angry with them. So that has very, very deep long-term consequences.
Mhm.
There are like hundreds of other issues as well that come out of it. I think that the third one that's the most important is physical abuse almost always becomes a tradition. So if there's an environment in which a parent is beating up a child, a father is abusing the son, it's very likely that that son will end up abusing his children as well if he has any. And if not his children, then women or dogs or, you know, whatever else. So abuse tends to be a family tradition. And one of the reasons it's a family tradition is because it just feels so normal and natural, even though it hurts and it's horrific. It feels normal and natural. It feels weird not to have it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you believe that we can break that cycle?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. um, and once again, breaking the cycle requires courage, especially on the part of the person who was an abuser previously. So, yeah, it, it can be hard to, you know, evaluate yourself and look back on your life and notice all the things that you've done that are bad to other people.
Mhm.
And we've all done bad things to other people. Um, Letting go of the guilt is difficult for some people. Learning from that behavior is difficult for some people, but it's essential for growth.
Yes. Yeah. Well, how do we recover from having been bullied?
Some people don't. Most people can. Um, some people don't because they just never do what needs to be done in order to get there because it's too painful.
Okay.
So there's some people who were so brutalized when they were growing up that the thought of doing what they need to do to confront those energies and purge them is more painful than what they're feeling in their current life. So they, you know, they've made a subconscious decision to stay in the energy where they are right now, even if it is unfulfilling and unpleasant, because to confront those abuses and purge them, clear those traumas, that feels like it's more scary or more difficult than living as they are right now. Now, for those people, it is possible in some cases to clear trauma without having to know what it is. Sometimes you can clear traumatic imprints without having to relive them. But unfortunately, in our society, we have the model of, you know, psychotherapy, for example, which explicitly tells you that the only way to get away from the trauma is to go through the trauma. The
Yeah.
only way around it is through it, and that's true in many cases. And I firmly believe that nothing happens unless you take action and you do what needs to be done in order to achieve your goals. But it's not true that the only way to heal a trauma is to relive it as though it's happening right now, so you can understand it and analyze it and pick it apart and figure out how it fits in with your narrative and all of that. There are ways to purge the energy without having to relive it. And another thing is, there are ways to purge the pressure of the energy and get it down to like a little simmer, just a low boil, and then go in and face the trauma head on. It's a lot easier than when it's pressurized to the point of exploding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wonderful. Yeah. I love how you mentioned about taking action to achieve our goals. And we don't have to go into all the muck or remember it or even the feelings to have all of that, those wounds cleared.
Hmm.
And you also mentioned about we need to feel secure and be assertive in a good way
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
enduring.
And yeah, well,
A lot of good points.
security is an awesome goal. That feeling, that internal feeling that you are standing on stable ground and that the sky is not going to fall on you at any moment, that's an unfamiliar feeling for a lot of people. It has two elements to it. You know, there's that free floating anxiety that a lot of people have, that there's danger lurking, they don't know where it is, and the sky is going to collapse on them at any moment. So that's one type of anxiety. So the feeling that the sky will fall in from above. And then there's the other anxiety that people have as well, where they feel ungrounded. They feel like there's no stable ground for them to walk on, like the ground is shifting and moving beneath their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, it's important to establish both of those, that grounding energy where you feel like you have a solid platform to stand on and you're anchored in place, and then the elimination of that feeling that expectation that something bad is going to happen. You just don't know what it is. The biggest problem with that feeling that something horrible is going to happen and you don't know what it is, the pain of anticipation is debilitating for some people. So what they do is they know something bad is going to happen. They just don't know where or when. So they take control and they blow it up themselves. So that way they're not in that energy of anticipation anymore. They're in the energy of the problem, and that feels better than the possibility of something unexpected happening. So self-sabotage is a really, really common consequence of having been bullied.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, you have two free gifts to offer. Would you like to
Oh,
share?
yeah. So they're two closely related gifts, and they're both about trauma healing, trauma
Wonderful.
clearing, like purging the traumatic imprints.
Hmm.
And the first one is a lecture. It's a detailed explanation of what trauma is from my perspective as an energy healer, and how trauma can impact you, how it can set you up to relive the trauma over and over and over again until you've released the imprint. And then the second recording is an actual trauma clearing session. So it's actual light bridge energy work in order to purge trauma. And I just have to clarify, I just want to make sure everyone knows that when I do like light bridge healing sessions and audio sessions like the one that's in the free gift, it's not meant to be a magic wand. It's not meant to like make your problems disappear without you doing anything. You are not a passive player in this. So the trauma clearing thing is going to help you recognize what your energetic patterns are so you can take action to create something new and better for yourself and your life. But nothing happens unless you take action.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I often tell people there are no magic wands, and that action is that just like it says in the Bible, faith without works is dead.
Hmm.
It's one thing to, have faith and to believe that this will work. It's another thing for you to do what needs to be done to make it work. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And what I found in my life when made me think of another time when I was going through my own healing process, well, about 20 years ago, and the and when you can move forward and start taking action and start healing, sometimes there's no way going back. You don't want to go back to what was.
of
You
course
want to
not.
keep taking the
Yeah.
action steps to keep you moving forward, and you just like the doors open. It's just like a whole new life. Start loving yourself. You start seeing the bigger picture.
Hmm.
You start becoming a better example, and like you and I are doing, helping others heal around the world. That's one of the greatest gifts that we can offer people,
Yeah, it's
helping
awesome.
them heal their wounds. So
Yeah.
before we close, do you have anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I think I would just say trust yourself
Mhm.
and um, yeah, just I just say love, light, and joy to all of you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. And I want to thank you once again for being here on this little micro summit.
Thank
And
you.
remind everyone that your information picture will be below, and all they have to do is click on your link for your gift and your information. And thank you so much again for being here and sharing your words of wisdom.
Thank
I'm
you. Thank
familiar
you.
with your work and I absolutely love it. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you, Patrick.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well, bye for now.
Bye bye.